everyone and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for coming back. Today I'll be sharing with you my June and July book haul. Now this book haul is quite big and it's for one reason only, is because I actually graduated from my bachelor's degree in June. So to celebrate I bought a lot of books. Because I have a lot of books, let's just get right into it. So the first two books I have to share with you were sent to me from Alan and Unwin, and that would be Morbid by Ewa Ramsey and None Shall Sleep by Ellie Marnie. Both these books come out on the 1st of September and I'm actually quite excited to get to them. One is a contemporary coming of age story, another is a YA thriller. So first I'm going to start with all the books that I've already read, which is great. I have a nice stack next to me that I have read. I have Her Royal Highness by Rachel Hawkins. This is a YA highness romance with a female-female love story. I talk more about it in my July wrap-up. Next I have Nimona by Noelle Stevensons. I reread this book and I recently had to buy it because I fell in love with the Shira series. Then I have Shira, The Legend of the Fire Princess, which I also read in July. Next I bought Fence Volume 4. I've already read this and I'll be wrapping this up in August. The next book I bought was The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. I absolutely adored this book. I'll be gushing about this in my August wrap up. The Extraordinaries is a YA sci-fi. Then I have Snot Girl Volume 3. Really enjoyed this. I will wrap this up also in my August wrap up. Then we have another TJ Klune book, The House on the Cerulean Sea. I absolutely adored this book. It's such a sweet, soft, queer fantasy and I highly recommend picking this up and buying it or borrowing it. And I'll also be talking more about this in my August wrap up. Then I bought Warrior of the Wild. Earlier this year I read Shadows Between Us by Tracy Levenseller, and so I had to go out and buy her other books and I really enjoyed this one. And I've already wrapped this up in July. The next book I bought was Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Oh my god, I just finished this a couple of days ago and I will be gushing about this book this month's wrap up. I absolutely adored it. Then I have Raybearer. I actually finished this last night. Oh my god, it was so amazing. I will definitely be also gushing about this in my August wrap up. This book actually recently came out this week worldwide, so I highly recommend supporting this debut fantasy. It's so unique, so different, and there's so many twists and turns, so definitely pick up Raybearer. And the last book that I've already read in my haul is The Empire of Gold by S.K. Chakraborty. I finished this in July, so I have more thoughts on it in my July wrap up. The Dharma Bud series is amazing. I highly recommend grabbing it if you haven't already read it. So the next stack of books are ones that I have to read, and of course it is the biggest stack. So first I'll start with the two books I'm planning to hopefully finish by the end of this month because they are book club books, and that is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. This is for the Black Hotties book club. And I also have The Beautiful by Renee Ardia, which is Patreon pick for Books with Chloe, and this is actually my current read. The next stack of books I bought were actually books that were really cheap on Amazon and also recommended to me. So that was The Sorcerer and the Crown by Zen Cho. Really excited to get to this. The City in the Middle of the Night, Charlie Jane Anders. Also really excited to read this. This is actually a standalone sci-fi novel. Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. I have been curious about this book for the longest time since it came out, and I finally picked it up because it was really cheap and it just sounds like a dark YA fantasy, which I quite like. The next book I picked up was Midnight Never Come by Marie Brennan. I have never heard about this book before and I saw it on Amazon and it was like $7, and it's actually a historical fantasy set in Elizabeth I's time when there's fairies in an underground council that also talked with Elizabeth I, which sounds so amazing. So I can't wait to read this and to see if it's as good as it sounds. And then I have Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Rowanhorse. This is a urban fantasy set in the dystopian world with Native American mythology, which sounds super exciting. I can't wait to get to this, and I've already actually ordered the second book. The next bunch of books I bought are all sequels. So I have Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. I haven't read Vicious yet, but I'm nearly done with the Darker Shade of Magic series, and this is the next series I need to get to by V.E. Schwab, so I'm super excited to jump into this, and this was an absolute bargain, so that's why I got it that day. Then I have A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmener, and this is also a YA fantasy set in an urban world, with first book being a Beauty and Beast retelling, so really excited to jump into the second book. Then I finally picked up A Reaper at the Gates by Sabaa Tahir. I absolutely adored A Number of Ashes. I really want to reread it this month and hopefully finish this series by the end of the year because the fourth and final book is just around the corner, so I need to catch up. Then I have Avenge by Amy Tintera. I read Ruined, the first book, a few years ago now, and I really loved it. I accidentally bought the third book instead of the second book, so I never got around to finishing the series. So now I have both books next in this trilogy, so I can't wait to finish it. And this is then I have a couple of spin-off series. I have The City and Tower by Melissa Caruso, which is a book set in the same world as the Tethered Mage trilogy, so I'm really excited to grab this soon. And lastly, for spin-offs, I have Magics of Wind and Mist by Cassandra Rogus Clark. I read Magics of Sea and Blood a few years ago. This is actually a bind-up of 2 books. When I read Magic of Blood and Sea, it was such a magical read, so I can't wait to grab this duology and hope I get that same feeling again. This is a pirate fantasy kind of feel. Next, I have a couple of sci-fi books I bought recently. First is A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe by Alex White. I really want to read more sci-fi. The only high sci-fi I've read is Becky Chambers' books. Besides that, I've only ever read YA sci-fi, so I'm really excited to jump into this book. I also picked up The Cruel Stars by John Birmingham. This is also a high sci-fi book, and I'm really excited to see if I like this as well. Next book I bought was A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. This is a YA fantasy about 2 sisters. I saw this going around on Twitter, and I saw the announcement of the second book, and I absolutely loved the cover, so I grabbed it, and I think I'm going to really enjoy this. Then I bought Stealing Thunder by Alina Boyden. This was on my most anticipated books of 2020 list, so when I got the chance to buy it, I grabbed it. This is an epic fantasy inspired by the Mughal Empire, which I'm really excited to read about. It also features a trans main character. Then I have Girl, Step and Thorn by Melissa Bashadaus. This is also on my top books for 2020 list. I'm really excited to read this. This is a YA Persian inspired fantasy novel, and I've also heard it has a female-female relationship in it, so I'm super excited to get to this soon. Then I've got The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This is the first N.K. Jemisin book I've ever bought, and I really hope that I love it. I actually picked this one up because it's urban fantasy, and I love urban fantasy, so if there's any book that will make me love N.K. Jemisin, it will definitely be this one. So this is an urban fantasy set in New York. The next book I bought was Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Grass. I have been super interested in the book for the longest time. The only thing that was ever holding me off from it was that it was set in the 60s. I technically only like really historical fantasies or something like 1800s, but the premise sounds so good. It's about the god of death and I've heard so many great things about this book, so I had to grab it. Then I picked up The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. At the start of this year, I actually read R.J. Barker's first trilogy. I absolutely adored it, so I'm really excited to get to this. And this is a new fantasy that is set on sea, about war, and has dragons in it. Then I picked up Upon a Burning Throne by Ashok K. Banker. I only bought this because Starla Reads talked about it so much and it sounded so amazing, so I had to pick it up, and I'm hoping to get to this really soon. But the month is just running out so quickly, so we'll see if I can get to it this month. And this is an Indian inspired fantasy. Then I have Song of Blood and Stone by Elle Penelope. This is a gorgeous edition of this book. I've actually had this on my Goodreads TBR since I saw this being announced. It's always been super expensive in Australia, but this edition luckily was really cheap, so I finally got to buy this amazing looking fantasy, and it seems to be about war and spies, and I can't wait to jump into it. Then I have The Lost City by Amanda Hocking. This is a book set in the same world as the Trill trilogy. I absolutely loved the Trill trilogy back when it first came out, and I loved the spin-off, the Canaan Chronicles, so I'm really excited to jump back into that world and relive nostalgia. And lastly, I have A Tiger at Midnight by Swati Tidala. This book sounds so amazing. I love the little catchline at the back. Kill the general, evade his soldiers, find the assassin, save the country, don't fall in love. Like, how can you not read that book? I believe the sequel was released recently, so I definitely wanted to pick this up. So that's all the books that have arrived for the month of June and July. I actually pre-ordered one other book, which was Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert, which will hopefully come very soon as it was released in Australia. As I think it's going to be released in Australia next week, so hopefully that comes soon. So thank you so much for watching. So comment down below if you read any of these books and help me bump them up on my TBR. Subscribe if you want to watch more videos from me, and I'll see you later. I better go get reading. Bye!